Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me. We have had a hopefully wonderful holiday season and we are back. So, welcome to 2026. I have thrown a couple links up in the comments section there. So, if you did not get the email or you didn't use the email and you wanted to click on any of those to see the different pieces that we have for reference and help right on our website. This is going to be posted, of course, to Facebook for about 30 days and then YouTube forever. So everything we talk about today will be accessible as well. And you can use that as a reference. Good morning, Miss Kathy. So I typed a message to Jane, but good morning to Jane, just in case you didn't see that. So there's a lot of information I just dumped in the comments, but she was on before we went live. So I said, hey, in the comments. So hello, Miss Cindy. So ScanNCut is one of my favorite topics. I use my ScanNCut all the time. I absolutely love it. I use it for lots and lots of things. I use it here at the shop to make signage and different things like that. Of course, for classes and things at home, I like to make shirts. I've actually made Leabu shirts with iron-on heat transfer vinyl and, made different things that I wear around. And you can just use it for just about anything. So there's so many options with the ScanNCut. A lot of people buy it specifically because I want to cut fabric, whether it's applique fabric, quilt squares, quilt pieces, those wonderful half square triangles. Good morning. Let's see, we have Miss Jen Pisky. I can never remember how to pronounce your last name. I'm so sorry. But good morning to you either way. So, hello, Miss Trish. And I do have a class coming up. I looked at the calendar. I think I've got it scheduled. I cut the samples and everything last night. So I'm going to hopefully post that class available right after. Hello, Miss Pat. Oh my goodness, in North Carolina, and Miss D as well. So hello to everybody. Thank you for joining me. So I do have a class coming up. It will be a couple Thursdays from now. I think it's the 22nd, whatever that week is, the Thursday, I'm going to do the ScanNCut class. It will be available for in-store or online. That is always an option. And we are going to be using the rotary tool for the class. So I'll show you before we get out of here today what we're going to be working with so that you guys can see. I love the rotary tool. It's one of my favorite blades. I use it for things even when it's not an available thing. So I think you answered yourself, but yes, you can take the classes virtual, whether you get the kit or not, and just play along and listen along, play with what you have. That's fine. I don't usually make the kit mandatory unless it's literally something you absolutely have to get from me. So, so sorry, pardon. All right. So I'm just going to jump in so that there is, I know that you guys, it's kind of odd to hear me rambling on by myself, right? So it's a little different when there's a conversation happening, but we're just going to jump right in. So I'm going to switch my screens here and make this guy bigger. Woo, I'm not sure what just happened on my screen, but I didn't like it. Okay, there we go. Much better. So it full screened on me, and I'm not really sure exactly why. I must have held the mouse down too long or something. But it was very strange, and I lost vision of all of my comments section, which means I can't talk to you guys. So that's not a good thing. All right, so we're going to talk about the mats that you see. Thanks, Trish. I appreciate that. So we have the main mats here. We have 3 different types. So today we are going to be talking about the DX models. I do know a lot of you out there are still using your CM series. They still cut. We still have tools available for those. I can still get you new mats and all of that stuff. I just no longer can teach it because it's just gotten to be too much to try to do both. But I'm always here. If you got it from us, I'm happy to help and answer any questions if you do have a CM at home. But these are what are available for the DX models. So I'm actually going to switch screens again so that that's even a little bit bigger. And who needs to see my face anyways? So what we have here are the 3 that are available. And depending upon what machine you got is going to depend on which one came with your machine. So we have the low tack mat and the standard mat. So those have been around for a little while. They did revamp them. So if you are out there and you're wondering, The mats are not interchangeable. So if you do switch from your CM to a DX, they are completely different. You can't put one mat into the other and vice versa. They are different. So the DX have these little code things on the both the top and the bottom, and that is where the sensors use to see the depths of the product that you have on the map and how to set that blade. So the CM mats won't work in the DX because they don't have those, and these don't work in the CMs. So just a note of caution there. Don't try to use them interchangeably because you'll just run into some problems. So we have the standard mat. Standard mat is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to use that for the bulk of your items. Good morning, Miss Roseanne. And then the low tack mat is, again, just what it sounds like. It has a lower amount of stick to it. So if you are putting something down that needs to come off a little bit easier because, for instance, paper or something that's paper backed, you are generally going to use your low tack mat, because if you put that on a mat that's too sticky, half of your paper is going to stay on the mat. So we have the different mats here. And then this one here, this one was new for the DX. And this is called the fabric mat. This is actually the one that has the most amount of tack. It is super, super sticky. So for all of you people that had a CM series or maybe still do, you may have noticed sometimes it's really hard to cut fabric because fabric doesn't always stay on the mat very well. And if it shifts around, then unfortunately, you're not getting the shape or the triangle or whatever it is that you're looking for. So what this is super sticky, so it holds your fabric in place. This mat is intended for fabric, like it's called, fabric mat. It is not necessarily intended for fabric that is backed by anything. So this is a fabric only mat. So you can starch your fabric. You don't have to starch your fabric, whatever is your personal preference, or depending upon the project that you're doing, whether maybe you do or don't want starch on the fabric. But this one is going to be the super sticky mat. I'm going to move this out of the way for just a second. So they all come with the plastic piece, and you do want to keep that plastic piece because that's going to keep things from sticking to the mat when it's got a really nice grip. Things from sticking. So even just pieces of fabric or little fuzzies, that's going to help keep that clean and as ready for use as possible. One of the other things that I get asked quite a bit about mats is how do I clean them? So I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm going to do it twice because I have two mats that need to be cleaned so you can see that. Do I put iron-on stabilizer on the back? So fabric, if I'm cutting fabric with a fusible on the back, so I'm using it for probably an applique or something to that something like that, I put the fusible on the back. I do not use this mat. If you absolutely want to use this mat, you would need to flip it upside down and put the fabric side down, not the paper side down, and then you would have to mirror image and do other things to make that all work. So just keep that in mind. You can use this, but you probably wouldn't want necessarily the thin fabric blade, which I'm going to talk about blades in just a few minutes, but I want to talk about the mats just for another second. If I generally have a fusible on my fabrics, I'm going to probably use the standard or even the low tack, depending on how new my mats are and how sticky they are. So again, those are generally a paper backed thing. So you don't want to put paper on your fabric mat, and you don't want to put paper on a super, super sticky standard mat either. Otherwise, you're going to leave parts of it behind, which we don't, of course, want. So this is what I use to clean the mats. I learned this from one of our brother educators, Cindy Hogan. You guys may have heard of her or maybe even met her if you've come to our booth in Novi. She generally is there. This is LA's Totally Awesome. You can find this at the Dollar Tree. I've found it at Big Lots. You can order it on Amazon, but it's way more expensive. But it comes in here. It does have concentrate information on the side. Ignore that. We do not dilute it at all for this. I generally spray 4. If I have a super dirty mat, I can spray like a 5th dot in the middle. But you definitely need to have moisture on the mat. And then I just move that liquid around and it picks pieces up. I'm not scraping. If I scrape, I'm actually going to remove a lot of that adhesive, and we need the adhesive on there. We just want to get the gunk out of it. And so I will move my liquid around until I get to all of the spots on my mat. And again, I'm not scrubbing. I am using the Brother scraper. It's called a scraper, but please don't scrape. Just generally push everything around on the mat. The fabric mat, sometimes, especially if you've used red, it will hold the color there even if you get all the fuzz out. So you can see this is shaded pink a little bit, or maybe you can't, but I'll hold it up in a minute. It is a fairly strong cleaner, obviously, because it talks about diluting it and whatnot. So don't inhale like real strongly, because you're going to end up coughing like I just did. All right, so then I make a pile at the bottom, and I take my paper towel, just standard paper towel. We do have Bounty here at the store, but that doesn't really matter. And the first thing I do is I pick up my pile of gunk. So all of that was in my mat. And when you have too much in the mat, it keeps it from being able to grab hold. So if it's not sticky, then it won't be able to grab hold of your items. So I'm just going to now clean off the rest of my cleaner that I didn't get with that scraping tool. So I'm just gently rubbing that down. Now, important for this, it does need to air dry. So don't put your plastic piece directly back on top of that. Set it aside, let it air dry, and it will be just as sticky as it was when you started. I'm going to do that one more time in case people are just joining us, because this mat needs to be cleaned as well. So, sorry, pardon. You can see the outline a little bit. I cut cork on here, so you can see it was a fabric-backed cork. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. And so it was sitting right like that. You can see the outline if you're looking closely of the edges. So when the blade goes through your fabrics, it's going to get the fuzzies and whatnot, and it does put that in there. A lot of people panic when they first start using this because their mat gets lines in it. That is 100% normal. You are supposed to get lines in it. If the blade doesn't reach the mat, unless you are using a half cut feature, it should put a line on the mat. That is 100% normal. So it didn't really look like that heavy of stuff was on there, but look at all of that that's coming out. And all of that is going to prevent items from being able to stick to my mat. So I want that cleaner to be everywhere. I want to make sure I'm getting all sections. All right. And I'm just gently moving all of that. And then I generally make a pile at the bottom. If I still have little bits, remember, I'm going to use a paper towel, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to stop cleaning. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off my scraper and put it back in my toolkit. Then I pick up my pile of yuck, lots of stuff there. And all of that is going to prevent me from being able to use the mat to its best capabilities. So then when I wipe that off, you can see how much more comes up. And I just want to make sure that that gets all of the stuff off. And now you cannot see any yuck. So we are just going to go ahead and let that sit there for a minute. It needs to air dry, like I said. And looks like Sharon's popped on since I had a chance to look over there. So hello to Miss Sharon. The next thing I want to talk about is the blades, and then we'll get into a little bit more depth of each different piece. So the standard ones, you have a standard blade and a standard mat. A standard blade and a standard mat come in every ScanNCut. So it doesn't matter whether you buy an entry-level one, not from me, or actually I do have one entry-level one here that's more like $400 instead of the $800 or $1,000 or $1,100. The standard mat and the standard blade come in every ScanNCut out there. All right. That's because that's the one you're probably going to use the most, right? That makes the most sense. It's the standard blade for standard stuff. All right. The other blades that are available and could come in your box are the fabric blade. I bet you guys can figure out what mat that one generally is used with, right? The fabric mat and the fabric blade do tend to go together. All right. And then the other one that could possibly come in your box, depending upon, again, which model you purchase, is the rotary blade. And I was just using this one. So this one, they all come with these little caps over the top of the blade, or the bottom, I guess. I throw all of these white caps out. I keep my rotary one because I need to make sure that I have that blade covered, because it is an actual open blade. All right. So it is a miniature rotary blade. And the wonderful thing about this blade is that it works really, really well because there's no drag. So just like when you're cutting with a ruler and you use a rotary blade along a ruler edge, there's no drag on that blade as long as your blade is good, right? If you have nicks in it, then you get some problems. But as long as you have that clear circle, it rolls and you don't have any drag. The same thing happens when you use this, which means you can cut items like this that if you tried to use your standard blade and it was dragging, would pull it off the mat and cause problems, which was the problem that we had a lot of times with our fabrics. So now we have a fabric blade and we have a rotary blade. If I am using fabric by itself, I use the fabric blade. Okay. That is most of the time all I use this little man for. Good morning, Miss Kathy. Can I clean too much? You can leave the cleaner on too long. And like I said, it is a very strong cleaner. So I don't recommend spraying it and then walking away and leaving it sit there, because it will actually eat at things if you do that. So you want to clean and finish the whole process every time. As far as can you clean too much? No, not particularly. But you don't have to clean after every use. You want to clean when you have enough on there that your items aren't able to grab hold as well as you would like. All right, so my fabric mat is dry, and I'm literally, it's sticky, right? I mean, that's the whole point. But it is just as sticky as it was, if not probably more, because there was fuzz in there. So my fabric mat is now ready to be put away. So you want to take your, I'm so sorry. You want to take your plastic piece. And what I generally do is I line up the edge where there's no sticky first, and I get the whole part at the very bottom, which you can't see, it's slightly off screen. There's where you can hang it or whatever. I get that stuff lined up, and then I lay that down so that it's pretty lined up with that. And then I just gently lay that on there. So that's going to protect that. And it's now stuck to the mat underneath of it, which is awesome. There we go. So we have that plastic covering. So that's now protected until the next time I need to use it. The fabric mat I use only for cutting fabric. I don't put anything else on there. And I only use it personally for fabric all by itself. And with that, I'm going to use the fabric blade. I am going to switch cameras here real quick, because this camera, I can zoom in, but it's a little bit harder to see. So we're going to just pop over here. And this is just sleeping. I'll turn it back on in a second. But I really wanted to show you is the size of this blade, which is very, very tiny. You can see it popping out there against the blue. It's just that tiny little tip. And it rotates inside, which is how it turns corners and that kind of thing. Your standard blade, on the other hand, is much more robust. So you can see how much larger that blade is. You can actually really see it. The light just hit it with that shiny spot there. Comparatively, the drag on one versus the drag on the other is going to greatly differ, which is why they came up with this. So this lightweight blade that is just so tiny, and is able to turn corners, and it also doesn't tear and shred your fabric edges. So that is what the fabric blade was designed for, was cutting fabric all by itself. The gold top here matches the gold top of the fabric mat. Some people call this tan. I don't care what you call it, whatever, brown, gold, tan, whatever floats your boat. I just think gold sounds better, what the heck. So those two go together, and I pretty much don't use them for anything else. fabric by itself, starched, not starched. I do think personally it comes out a little bit cleaner when you starch it, but that just makes sense. It totally depends on what your end game is. So is the project that you're going to put that piece of fabric in, can it have starch in it, or is it not supposed to? Because if it's not supposed to, then don't starch it. Just cut it without the starch and it will work just fine on that fabric mat. So this blade matches, I'm going to grab it real quick so you can see that color. It matches the color, and that's how you know they go together. All right. So fabric mat, I know it's upside down, and the fabric blade. Those two are very specific. That's what you use it for. And please don't use it for other things. I have had multiple people go, oh, I just thought I would use the fabric mat because I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to move. Well, it won't move, but it probably won't all come off either, especially if you're using paper or something like that. So we talked a little bit about the standard blade. I'm using the blue background here so that you can see that. It is a much more robust blade. All right. And that is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck. You're going to be able to cut heavier items, and you're going to be able to get a cut on just about anything. So this is what I generally use if I'm doing cardstock, if I am doing standard heat transfer vinyl or craft vinyl that's not super intricate. This is going to work really great. You know, back in the day, we didn't have a vinyl blade, which is what this blue top blade here is. This one looks a lot like your fabric blade. It's a much smaller, more intricate blade so that you can get in smaller spots. So if you picture tiny little points or tiny little circles that you need cut, this one, a lot of times, if you've been doing this for a while, the standard blade actually sometimes when it would cut a little circle, the blade would actually pull the circle out. So it would stick to, and then it would fall next to it on other items. So this blade allows you to cut really tiny circles and have it remain in position. Good morning, Miss Cindy. Have I cut felt or cuddle with any success on my ScanNCut? Yes, I absolutely have cut felt. Funny you should mention it. I actually have some felt samples right here. So these are all felt flowers. And there is different quality felts that I have cut. So this navy blue is basically the same file, but they're very different quality of felts, different types of cuts. So this one is more like a rose. And what this is basically a big spread out circle, and you just get these cuts and then you roll it and you get your flowers. So these are rolled flowers. This is actually one of the things that I'm going to do in the class that's coming up. We are going to cut felt as well. So if you get the kit, you'll get a piece of cork and you'll get a piece of felt. And that's what we're going to cut with the rotary blade. So now that we have this here a little bit better, you can see this miniature rotary blade. And it really is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And again, I highly recommend that you keep that white piece because it's open and you don't want it, one, to cut up your case or whatever you have it sitting in, and you don't want to cut your fingers when you pull it out of wherever you store it. So keep that on there until you're ready to use it so that you keep yourself and anybody else around you safe. All right, the only other blade that I haven't actually shown you is this vinyl blade. I talked about it briefly. It's just almost like your fabric blade. Slightly different shape, but it's very similar in that it's a very dainty blade, and that's going to allow you to cut really tiny circles or little points, like a little end point on lettering or things like that. Please take a minute and hit the thumbs up button. Yes, thank you so much. That is very sweet. Yes, we are definitely you know, we're out there with a lot of other people that are talking about different things. So if you like all of my videos, that definitely helps us out. So just thank you for that, Miss Cindy. All right. So we've talked about the different blades. When do I use what? I did put up at the very beginning of all of the comments here, the links to our site so that you can download those. I also put links in the email that I sent out. So if you're on our email list, you can download all of those different pieces. And those are things that are going to help you when you're at home and I'm not available to call and ask a question. But during working hours, I invite you to call and say, hey, I'm doing this. What would you cut this on? Or what blade would you do? Or how would you prep your fabric? Or whatever that happens to be. A lot of you joined us for our block of the month. We ran it twice, and it was called My Happy Place, and it was all sewing things. I used the rotary blade with a fusible backed fabric for all of my appliques on that entire quilt. So I pre-cut all of my applique pieces using this blade, and I had that with fusible on the back. And it did a beautiful job. It didn't shred anything. It cut beautifully. Everything came out exactly like it was supposed to. And I didn't ruin any fabric because I didn't have things separating because of the drag. So I don't know if you've ever cut fabric before and you have your two pieces. So you have your fusible and you have your fabric. You fuse them together, you put them on the mat, and you go to cut them and they separate out. And that is no fun. And it ruins both pieces because it's cut into them. So you have to redo. Sometimes you can iron them back together, but the drag that's you being on that heavier blade is what's causing that. So if you use the rotary blade, there is zero drag, which is why we can cut felt. Let's see if I used to have a whole bunch of samples in my little toolkit here. And somebody thought it was a really good idea to take them all out. And I don't know where they went. So they're in a pile somewhere in this store, but I actually have a small minky star, and I have a small leather star, and then I have cork. This is the vinyl from OESD. This is great to cut with that rotary blade. I think I probably use my rotary blade at this point more than any other blade. The only time I'm not really using this for the most part is if I'm doing paper, because I don't want to use this and dull that out. And I will use the standard blade for that in general. But for the most part, vinyls, I will use a different blade because I generally have fairly intricate things. So I'm going to generally use my vinyl blade because that's why I bought it. But for all of my fabrics and all of my funky fabrics, anything that I'm cutting fabric wise, unless it's just fabric by itself on the fabric bed, I'm using this rotary blade for. So depending upon, again, what machine you purchased, if you purchased this one here, which is the SDX 330, so 330, it came with the rotary blade and the standard blade. All right. So you got these two blades and you got the standard mat and the low tack mat. Low tack, because a lot of times your felt and your cork and things you're going to use this for, you're going to use a low tack mat for. If you buy the 325, you're going to get the standard blade, because I told you that comes in every box, and you're going to get the fabric blade. You're going to get the standard mat and the fabric mat. Everything is available separately. So you can add on whatever you don't get in the box that you have decided to purchase. You can just add that on. If your machine does not come with a rotary blade, I highly recommend it. If your machine did not come with a fabric blade and you plan to cut fabric pieces that aren't fusible backed, I would recommend you get the fabric blade and the fabric mat. If you're planning to always use it with applique, so you're always going to have a backing on it, you probably don't need the fabric blade itself. I find a lot of people tell me that they buy their ScanNCut so that they have a way to cut fabric. And then they find out all the other things that the ScanNCut can do, and they don't just cut their appliques on it. They cut so many other things. So whether your felt is going into a project, whether you're making 3D things, whatever it is, it cuts felt beautifully. If you are looking for minky, it will absolutely do that. You can pre-cut minky applique shapes and set them in place. The class that I am talking about, I am going to do, I believe it's the 22nd. So Monday's the 19th, 2021. Yeah, so the 22nd of this month, so just a couple weeks from now. And we are going to cut a piece of felt, and we are going to cut a piece. Actually, this is the cork that we're going to cut. It's called, I can't remember. So sorry. It was right there, tip graffiti or something like that. But it's very fun. It's got a lot of really great color and a lot of texture to it. We have that in the store here. So that's what we're going to do. And this is the piece that we're going to cut, so that you just put a little, either a piece in that you separate out, which I don't recommend necessarily, but that could do. You could use a cam snap here, or I have rivets in here. So if you are in store, I do have a rivet press here at the shop. You could use rivets, but the cam snaps would also work really well here, or even there's a name for it. I'm sorry, I can't think of it, but it's like brass, they go in and then the pins open up. And you could use that as well. That would work. So whose felt is best? That is a really, really nice question that is very difficult to answer. I can tell you that sometimes you want a stiffer felt. You don't want it to be really soft, and we'll just say wimpy, because sometimes the really soft, really what feels really nice and soft doesn't stand up very well. Like even in the flowers, they tend to sink down a little bit more and be a little bit, yeah, I knew what you meant. No worries. So felt, less expensive felts tend to be stiffer, not as soft. But if you are looking for something that has a little bit more body, then that would be the way to go. In my brain, the best tends to be, what is it? How does it feel? Right. So what, that kind of thing. And honestly, of all of the felts that I've worked with here, Kimberbell felt is probably the softest. It's nice and heavy. And it definitely has some advantages. As far as these go, it's fine. It definitely works. So you can see there's a nice little spin, and you just keep spinning that out, and that's how these are cut, and then you roll them together, and that's how you get these great flowers. You can do them in any color you want. There are leaves. Leaves don't tend to look quite as nice because, again, they get a little wimpy, so a cheaper felt would probably be better. This is a little bit less expensive felt. I don't remember where I picked it up, but you can see it doesn't kind of relax. Well, maybe you can't. Dark is really hard to see right there, isn't it? So sorry. But I don't know if there's a blanket answer for what is best, because it does sometimes depend on what your project is, how it's going to play in there. But I don't see through the Kimberbell felt. It feels wonderful. It cuts really great. And it does a really nice job, and it's not thin where you have spots that you can see through that. Sometimes when you get a less expensive piece, you get spots that you can see through. And I know this isn't a great example, but it's got like a film on it, so it's a little stiffer, and there are thinner spots that are not as dense. So you get some variance in a less expensive piece. The less expensive ones you can generally get at like a Hobby Lobby or a Michael's or something like that. Of course, you used to be able to get it at Joann's, but that's not an option. For the most part, if flowers or something like that is your goal, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Have I ever cut OESD felt? Yes, I have, Miss Cindy. And OESD felt is very nice. It's also nice because the colors are different between OESD and the Kimberbell. They're different sized pieces as well. So I believe in the OESD packaging, you get 2 pieces. And in the Kimberbell, you get just a single piece, but it's larger than, so they fairly well balance out in size and how much felt you get, but it's 2 pieces versus 1 larger piece. They are discontinuing some of those Kimberbell felts. I don't believe they're discontinuing all of them, but who knows? Kimberbell changes their mind on things on a regular basis. And I can't keep up with what they're doing and what they're not doing anymore. They put everything on sale, so it's not just old stuff anymore. So used to be they only put the discontinued items or older items on sale. Now it's kind of a free-for-all. Who knows what's going to be on sale? Is this class live so we can sign up and not have to be in the store because you're in Texas? Well, I'm glad you're in Texas, and that's why you don't want to be in the store. But yes, it will be a virtual option. I will have kits available. You'll get, again, a piece of the cork and a piece of felt in the kit. It is not mandatory to buy the kit if you have items at home. So for those of you who are out of state and want to participate, we are going to be talking exclusively about the rotary blade in that class, and we will be cutting those items. We'll talk about things that are in the machine, how to add different things in, and where I get different files and things like that. So it's not going to just be cut 2 pieces and then we'll be done. It will have educational things in there as well. But you can absolutely join the class, and you can use your own materials at home, especially if you're out of state and you sign up last minute. I'm not going to be able to get you a kit on time. Mail is very slow right now. So even if I send it out, it's not necessarily a 2-day ship. So Do keep that in mind if you're out of state. Either sign up early enough, and I'm hoping to get that all listed and posted right after we sign off here today. I do have a pickup, but Ronnie's in today, so I'm going to have him do that. I have the piece cut now, so you can see exactly what that cork is going to look like, and then we'll put it together. It makes these cute little mini baskets. You can use these for like your sewing clips. You can use these for just little pieces of anything as an office thing. It's all different kinds of things. As soon as I am done here, I'm going to get Ronnie all of the information, and he's going to get that listed. So there will be probably just the $20 class fee. You can use your club card for that class. If you have it, you can use that. And then there will be a kit. I have to look up the dimensions of what this size piece would cost for that. And then of course a piece of felt, and that's going to be what your kit is. So again, it's not always about what you're making. Sometimes it's just about how do I use that tool and how do I cut different products. So just because you maybe don't want a little basket doesn't mean you shouldn't take the class. So sometimes I'm hesitant to put a project in because people don't take the class if they don't want to build that project. And that's not necessarily the focus of it isn't necessarily what you finish. It's how you got there and what you used and how it cuts and the different things like that. So let's talk a little bit more about basics. When we are using our mats, if I am cutting paper, which I didn't bring I didn't bring really any samples over other than the cork because I literally just cut it, and the felt because I leave them sitting on top. So I didn't bring over all the kinds of things that you can cut, but so sorry, pardon. The things that you can do. Obviously, you can cut fabric on the fabric mat. You can cut fabric backed on either the low tack if it's a newer mat or a standard tack if it's not as new. You come for the fun. I love it. Well, we try to make it fun no matter what you're doing. So that's definitely a goal. I always like to make it fun. I'm going to just grab a sip. I apologize. Hopefully that'll stop the coughing. Apologize on that one. Okay, so basics. Fabric by itself. You're going to use the fabric mat and the fabric blade. Starched or unstarched, does not matter. I'm going to go back over here just so that you can see. So the fabric mat and the fabric blade, those are very, very specific. You're going to use them specifically for cutting fabric. It can be starched. It doesn't have to be starched, but this is what you're going to use if you're going to be cutting, for instance, quilt squares, so half square triangles and all of those kinds of things. That is all you want to use that mat for. So it is very specific. It was designed to be very specific. So that is what that one is for. These two can be a little bit more interchangeable. And part of that is going to depend on how new those different pieces are. So if you have a brand new low tack mat, it's going to be fairly sticky still. All right. Just because it's low tack doesn't mean there's nothing there, right? You have some tack. That's the whole point. You have to have something. This is when it's brand new, what you're going to be using for those felts, for the cork, for paper, all of that kind of thing, because you want to make sure that what you're putting down can come back up. If you use something with too much tack, so especially a brand new standard mat has a whole lot of tack on it. It's not as sticky as the fabric, but it's got a lot on there, and that's the whole point. As you use it, you get cut lines through there, and those cut lines actually diminish the area, the surface area that has enough tack to hold your items, which is why we recommend that you move your cuts around the mat. Don't always cut in that right top corner, which is where your design is going to load in your ScanNCut. It will always load in that upper left-hand corner. I think I said right, and I apologize. It's the upper left-hand corner. So it looks like this when it's in the machine, and it's always going to load right here. If you always cut here, this corner of your mat is going to die fairly quickly because it's going to be cut lines everywhere, and there's not going to be a large enough surface area without a cut line to actually hold anything down. All right. So you want to move things around so that it's not cutting right in the same spot at all times. If you are cutting the same thing multiple times, if you have any possibility, shift it a little bit just sideways so you don't get a groove of a really deep cut that you've built in because it cut, 20 of the same shape. That's going to cut you're going to get a groove in there because it's going to cut in the exact same spot. You should absolutely not have the blade cutting all the way through your mat, no matter what you're doing. There should not be that happening. If that's happening, there is something wrong. You've got something in your blade that's not allowing it to move. You've got something going on. I definitely would turn the machine off, turn it back on, let it recenter, all of those kinds of things. Your blades can get dirty. All right. So, for instance, I had a customer come in and say, I cut all of this glitter vinyl and all this stuff, which had little glitter flakes on it, right? And glitter paper and all these different things because she was making Christmassy stuff and she was making it all really decorative. And she had a great time. But then when she went back to use it the next time, the blade wasn't cutting right. And so she wasn't getting any cut. It was saying that it was doing everything and it would cut, but there was nothing that was happening. And I was like, well, that's pretty weird. So I opened up her blade, which is how you change the blade, by the way. So let's talk about that as well while we're here. You're going to simply unscrew this part. There's a spring in there, so it'll pop up a little bit. This part comes off. So here's that spring. Occasionally that spring pops off down here and it comes off. If it does, just put it back in. No big deal. So here's my blade. All right. If I'm changing it, I'm going to very gently grab hold of it and pull it out. There's a magnet that's going to grab it back in and it's going to just sit right in there. I don't obviously want to come down and grab it this way. So I generally will turn it so that I am grabbing the flat side instead of the side that has the sharp. So I grab the flat side of the blade when I'm changing it. I pull that out. I put this in a safe place so that I'm not cutting anything in my trash. I take the new blade and I just drop it back in here, and then the magnet will grab hold and that will then stay in there. It doesn't fall out because there's a magnet. Sometimes there'll be glitter here. Sometimes there's glitter in here. What ended up happening this particular time is the housing here was completely filled with glitter. So the blade was not able to move. So I literally just went like that, whole bunch of crap dropped out of the blade. And then I cleaned it out. I got anything left in there. I actually took it back and blew a little bit of air in there to make sure I got everything out. So if your blade doesn't seem to be working right, check that. If you're cutting super fuzzy stuff like minky or something like that, it's very possible that that kind of thing could also come and put fuzzy in there and start blocking that if you do a whole lot of that. So cleaning out your blade housing is definitely something that you should also be doing. I tried to cut flex foam, but it wouldn't cut it. Any ideas why? I don't believe it's too thick. It probably just needed more passes. So we can cut up to a 3 millimeter of thickness with these machines. It's just a matter of putting that in there. So if it goes through, if it didn't go in and stop and tell you it wouldn't cut it, then it should go through it. So there's only the gap in there for everything to go through the machine. It will only cut a 3 millimeter of thickness. There is I'm going to switch the machine around here real quick. Boop, There is a lever right here, and this is level 1 and this is level 2. If you have it down on level 1, it probably would not cut. So you want to make sure that what this actually is doing, you have a scanner bar that sits in the middle of the machine. And when you scan, it would not go through the machine. So it might be too thick, but I feel like I've cut that particular product before. Make sure that this is up. It should have asked you to raise this if it wasn't up, because it usually will stop and say, raise the scanner bar. I'd have to try it myself. I have not cut that particular product, but if it wouldn't go through the machine, it means it was too tall. One other thing that you could possibly do, and maybe you had a corner that was tipped up a little bit that was hitting and telling it that it was too thick. If you tape down your corners so that that doesn't happen, or your edges, then that will sometimes allow you to cut something that it thought was too tall because the edges were poked up a little bit. So without having a specific conversation with you, Cindy, as to exactly, had you had the corners taped, where was your scanner bar, all of those things. I feel like that's not more than 3 millimeters thick. So it should have cut it. It probably had a spot somewhere. I reused my tape. You can see I have it sitting here. So I tape down my edges and try that and see if that allows it to slide through. It's probably one of the corners popped up or something. as it was going through, and it said, nope, too thick, can't do that. That would be my stab in the dark without actually having any more information. So yeah, give that a go and make sure that bar is up. Again, it should ask you to do that. So I didn't quite finish explaining this. The scanner bar sits there, and you want the scan to be as close to whatever it's scanning as possible so that you don't get shadows. If you have the scanner bar up here and you scan something, you can get shadows more when that what comes up on the screen. So if you are not aware, there is a scanner in these machines. That's why it's called ScanNCut, and it will scan either what you have on the mat and put it on screen so that you can see where your pieces of fabric are and make sure your cut lines are matching with that. Or it will take a picture, so it will create an image from an image. It will create those cut files. But if your scanner bar is farther away, you're going to not get as clean of a scan, which is why we can move it. So if we're not cutting anything thick, we want that down so that the scanner bar is farther down and we're getting the best scan. If we have thicker product, when that goes through, it's going to hit and it will stop and say, please raise the scanner bar. That's all that means, is raise that up to number 2. And then you hit go and it should go through. So what that is doing is when we have thicker product, it's keeping that scanner just right, hovering over our product. In general, you should have that at number 1 unless you're doing thicker products. All right. So hopefully that answered a lot of those questions. Rotary blade I use for almost everything. I don't generally cut vinyls with this, and I don't generally cut paper with this. Other than that, I think this one's fair game for just about anything. Standard blade. It's standard. It's kind of like your universal sewing needle. It is good for a lot of things, and you can make it work for a lot of things, which is why it comes in every machine. It's kind of like that universal blade. It will cut paper. It will cut fabric, but I don't necessarily recommend this one if you have access to the rotary blade. If you don't have access to the rotary blade, I would slow your speed down so it's not dragging any faster than it has to. And I would also make sure that that fusible is very well fused. One thing that I have put on my ScanNCut and never gotten to work, separates every time no matter what blade that I use. If I put EZT on the back of fabric, and then I put the EZT on the mat, it separates every time. No matter, and it's got a good fuse. It doesn't matter. For whatever reason, I can't seem to get that particular piece to work. I don't normally do applique with EZT, so that's not a problem for me in the big picture, but there was some instance, and it was to do with that My Happy Place, that I was trying to do that, and it just did not work at all. So that is the only thing that I have ever found is totally don't do that. But the universal standard blade really does work for just about everything. Vinyls, papers, fabric, not for felts and things like that. There's a reason the rotary blade was created. This drags on felt. I would not recommend this for those heavier, thicker items. That's why the rotary blade was created. So if you don't have the rotary blade and you want to cut those thicker items, I do definitely recommend that you get the rotary blade. This blade I love, but I am a big vinyl cutter. So this is the vinyl blade. It does not come in any machines anymore. It used to come in the 230. So if you have a 230, it may have come in your box. This one was designed to cut intricate vinyl. So heat transfer vinyl, or even the craft vinyl, same things. If it's an intricate cut, small circles, like little tiny circles, or things that have a really sharp point that you need it to go into that point and come back out and not shred up and pull up that corner, that's what this blade was designed for. And we already talked about the fabric blade. Your mats, the low tack and the low tack, which is the teal, and the standard, which is the purple, they are not interchangeable until they're very well loved. Once they're very well loved, you can get away with putting more things on your standard mat because it's not going to be as sticky as it was when it was brand new. It's going to have fuzz that's still stuck in things. It's going to have cut lines. It's going to lower the amount of tack. So as your blades get older, you'll need to replace them after a certain point. I don't replace it the first time things don't work. I increase my pressure. So I give it a little extra oomph before I replace it. And I generally bump that up to 2. When I get to 3, or when I need to get to 3, I just replace the blade. Replacing the mats when things are no longer sticking and you're cleaning them and everything's going as it's supposed to, except things are shifting no matter what. Tape is definitely your friend. All right. So we sell the ScanNCut tape. All washi tapes are not created equal. I have tried other ones. This is called a washi tape, but it is heavier and it's stickier than standard washi tape. If you use standard washi tape, you may get one cut run out of it, but it doesn't stay on the mat very well at all. And it definitely doesn't hold your product very, very securely. The ScanNCut tape was designed specifically for holding things to the mat, and I have put it right on the adhesive and still been able to get that back off. If you try to put regular tape on here, it's going to stick into that adhesive. It's not going to come back off. But if you are trying to elongate the life of your mat, taping down the sides, don't tape up here because that's where your blade sets. So if your blade tests and it hits the tape, it's not going to get the right depth. So you don't want to tape at the top of your mat where the machine, where it's entering in the machine. Good morning, Miss Karen. But you can tape just below the black line or up to the black line, and you can tape anything down here. So the edges of your felt, the edges of your fabric, those kinds of things, there's no reason that you can't tape that. For a while, we were told that the ScanNCut tape was being discontinued. I don't know if they got a lot of flack for that or what happened, but it is still available and I do have it in stock. And it is something I definitely recommend having to make your life a little bit easier. I tend to tape almost all of my papers just because I don't want that shifting. And paper is kind of finicky because it's kind of stiff. The cardboard doesn't always bend. If your blade is trying to turn and it can't quite turn and it's trying to move, it's going to pop that paper off. So I do definitely like tape to help with that kind of thing. All right. So as time goes on, your low tack mat is going to get to the point where it has not very much tack at all. You can still use it for things like felt or fabric backed cork, and then just tape those edges down and it will still work. It should have enough to do that even when there's a low amount of tack on a low tack mat. You can switch and put those items onto a standard mat if they've been very well loved. So if it's not as tacky as it was originally, then you can start putting things on here that I told you not to do with the first when it's brand new. Pieces of paper. Do not put cardstock on a standard mat when it's a brand new mat. You're going to leave half of that paper behind and you're going to end up replacing your mat. And there's not a whole lot I can do to help that. You can clean the living daylights out of it, but the only way to get it off there is to scrape. And what happens when we scrape is we remove the adhesive. So you're ruining the mat. So do not put those items on here because you want them to come back off. That's what the low tack mat is for. So you will need to replace your mats at some point. They are not considered forever items. They self-heal to an extent, but at the same time, those grooves are there for a reason. They have to happen or you're not getting a clean cut all the way through your product. And that is not going to last forever. It's just not. So the mats that come in the machines are 12 by 12. We do have a low tack and a standard tack 12 by 24 if you want to cut larger items. And then there's the scanning mat, which I haven't talked about at all because that's, in my opinion, not basic. So I said we were going to talk ScanNCut basics today, and that is my opinion. It's coming out of your basic level. If you are scanning, I have talked about scanning before. We've done a class that's only on scanning and how that all works. I do have that information. If that's something that you're trying to work on, I can certainly help you out with that. The scanning mats come in a 12 by 12 or a 12 by 24. The 12 by 24 will work in any of our 225s, 230s, 325, 330s. If you buy one of those, what are they, 85s or whatever the lower numbers are, they don't scan in 24 inches. They will scan, but they don't scan in 24 inches. They don't have the capacity to do that. So there are a few differences for sure between the less expensive ones. You will only get one mat, one blade, which is the standard in the standard in those lower machines. I do have one here if that is something somebody's dying to get into a DX model, but they don't want to spend $800 or $1,000 to get into one of our regular dealer machines. I do have one of those here, which means if you buy it from me, I still come with it, right? In the machines themselves, they are extremely user-friendly. So if you are I will come back to your question. Give me just a second. Let me go where I was going here, and then we'll talk about that. So this is the main screen. When you turn the machine on, off of the screen, we have our home button, which at any given time will take you back to this screen. We have our mat loading button, and we have a pause button. A lot of people don't realize you can actually stop the cutting just by tapping that pause button. So if it's in the middle of a cut and you're like, oh no, something's moved, you can pause it, maybe fix whatever's going on, or you see something about to move, or you want to add tape because it cut something that you think is going to move later on, or whatever. You can hit pause. It will pause. You can do whatever it is that you wanted to do, and then it'll go back to where it was. So that is a very important button. A lot of people don't realize is even there. On this screen, when you hit the wrench, you get all of the settings. So there are pages upon pages of settings, your network settings, your blade settings, everything is accessible on the home page. When you get into another page, and you choose we're just going to choose a basic design here. So you have that. You have size options. You can change sizes here. Like I said, it's always going to load in that upper left-hand corner. You need to get in the habit of moving it around your mat so that it's not always cutting in that upper left-hand corner, because you're going to end up wearing that corner of the mat out. And then when you have a larger item that takes up more and you do use this, it might not cut the same here as it does over here because of those grooves. It might have some other issues over here. So make sure that you're moving that pattern around and you have some other cut spaces being used, okay? So when you bring in your design, and now I still have that wrench. On one of these pages, I only have access to the settings that are relevant to what's on the page at the time, whatever page that I'm working on. So I don't get the whole access to everything. I only can change what's relevant to what I'm doing right here. So in this instance, I can change to a 12 by 24. I can change my pattern interval, and I can change my background. This is for scanning. I like the middle one here that's going to be faded out a little bit. This one I pretty much only use if I'm cutting white. So if I have white paper or white vinyl and I'm scanning, I'll use this one because I need to see the edges. So I almost get like a shadow, where this one I can still see my cut lines through even if I have a dark item on screen. So the middle one there is my favorite. Those are only settings that I can change on this page, and that's okay. I don't need to change anything that's not relevant. If I go into add, that brings me back to where do I want to get my pattern from. This is going to be off my USB or some of my wireless, and this is going to take me back to that home page. If I don't want to actually do that and I can go back to my mat very simply, and this is my workspace. So add is just like on your embroidery machines. You can add and have multiple things on the screen at the same time. In the edit menu, the first thing it comes to is kind of like a positioning page. We can move items, we can group items, and we can get rid of items on the page. Again, we have settings, not a whole lot of options here. We only have the cut in the background, which is okay. I can, like I said, throw things away. I can zoom in, and it's going to come in and zoom in on my mat so I can see things a little bit clearer. So in here, I can actually also increase the amount of my zoom, and I have move arrows to move my item that I have up here on the screen. I can actually shift it here, or I can touch and move it as well. So if I'm trying to make sure something's not overlapping, or I've scanned my mat and I can see I want to make sure it's on the fabric or on the paper, I can do that right here very easily. So I can zoom in. So that's my zoom. Object edit comes into my actual editing tools. These are very similar to your embroidery machines. We can resize. We can add, so we can duplicate an item. How many of them do I want? Unlike the duplicate, we actually can say I want 4 of them or something like that, and it'll throw 4 on the screen. I can rotate. I've got a nice set of rotation here. So if I'm trying to fit multiple things on the screen, or I'm trying to nook and cranny things, I can angle one item and scooch it into something else. I also have the ability to add a seam allowance. If I turn that seam allowance on and I have a 1/4 inch, it will add a 1/4 inch all the way around the outside of whatever it is that I'm working on. So if I look at that real close, the black line, which is my actual design, is inside now the red box. The red box has grown by a 1/2 inch because it's a 1/4 inch on each side of my design. So there's definitely a lot of powerful tools in here that you can add, and you can also mirror image. So if we have the product on the mat that is heat transfer vinyl, and we're trying to do a t-shirt, we're going to want to mirror image that. So if we had software, we could have done it there, but if not, we can bring that in here and then we mirror image it so that when you actually iron it on, it's readable. You don't want to have to carry a mirror around so that everybody can read your shirt, right? That's not very fun. If you accidentally turned on your seam allowance, you can turn that off just as easily, and then that goes away. So it's no big deal. And you can also change the width of that seam allowance. So if you're doing sewing for clothing or bags or something like that, that you wanted to add that seam allowance, you can do a 5/8 seam allowance. So you can change how big that seam allowance is, and it works really well. If you actually choose something from the quilt menu, it automatically adds the 1/4 inch seam allowance for you in that quilting menu. So when you pick out what sizes, it adds that automatically. It does that quilt math for you, which I really like. These other ones we're not going to use very often. So again, that's not basic. So I'm going to just get out of there. This button here is grouping. It's very important if you have multiple items on the screen and you want something to happen to all of them, that you group it. That's going to be how you do that. So your editing tools are super. What we have on the home screen, we have built-in shapes, built-in decorative shapes. The 330 has Disney, the 325 does not. So to speak to your question, is the 330 better than the 325? They are going to cut exactly the same. They have the same mechanical capabilities. It's what's built into the machine that's going to be different. So the stuff that comes in the machine, you get a few more fonts and you get the Disney designs. There's a few different things that are in the 330. So you get a little bit more. Hello. But it is mechanically, they're the same. So I don't generally, unless Disney is important to you and you want Disney, then there's no question you want that 330. If Disney is not relevant for you, then what you want to do is look at what comes in the box. So what blades are going to be the most important to you? So if you wanted to get the rotary blade, but Disney's not important to you, you could get the 325 and you could add the rotary blade and the low tack mat, and it's less money than buying the 330. So you can definitely decide what pieces that you want, and I will help you do that. I mean, I'm not going to sell you the 330 just because it's more expensive. It's not the right machine for you. We're going to get you the 325. So you never have to worry about me pushing you into the wrong machine. It's literally a matter of what do you want to cut, and we're going to figure that out for you. So in our built-ins, we have quite a bit. You've got some drawing tools. You have some different lettering. I told you about that quilt menu. There are so many different quilt squares that are built into this that you can do. And you tell it, you know, I want to do this and I want my finished square to be 9 inches, or maybe I want my finished square to be 10 inches. All right. So I tell it that and I hit OK. And then it tells me what shapes that I need for each different color and what angles and all of that. And I choose that, and it actually gives me the size that I need, and it includes that seam allowance, and I need 4 of them. It puts all 4 on the screen and nice and tight to one another, so I'm not wasting any more fabric. So the quilt menu in here is a wonderful tool. A lot of people don't realize how much is actually built into these machines. You've got some decorative things here as well as some decorative lettering, and there's just a ton. These are bigger files, so if you're using like the roller, I'm blanking on the name of the roller, I apologize. But there are just so many different menus. These are all menus. You can build boxes. We talked about the rolled flowers. Here's the rolled flower file. It's built right in, so it's right at the machine. I'm not sure why you can't hear me. Is everybody else okay? Everything looks good on my end. I apologize. I'm about to sign off anyways, so hopefully you guys can hear me. And okay, weird. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on. So hopefully it's good morning, Ms. Jan. So this is, of course, going to be posted. Everything that we talked about today, you can check in with which blades are what. There's the attachments on this conversation link, and there's also attachments that are listed. You could just go to our website, which is LeabuSewingCenter.com, and type in ScanNCut and see all the different things. And those are also just listed there. So the website is coming up right now. There it is. Shop with us at right below me, LeabuSewingCenter.com. You can always give me a call and I'm happy to send you things as well. I don't know what's going on. That's really weird because it appears it's fine in some places and not fine in others. So I apologize if that's happening. Hopefully the recording will be good. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. There's a lot of information. I could probably talk even ScanNCut basics for like 4 hours. So I have run ScanNCut basic classes where I give you a piece of paper, craft vinyl, heat transfer vinyl, and some fabric, and we cut everything so you can see the differences and what blades to use and what mats to use. It's just a matter of what is going to be the best thing for whatever you're doing. I am always available if you have questions on how should I cut this or what should I cut with this. Please feel free to shoot me a message and ask a question or give us a call. Mondays, we're here until 7, Tuesday through Friday from 10 till 5, and Saturdays from 10 till 3. I'm happy to answer all of those questions. Like I said, ScanNCut is one of my favorite things. I believe my class date is going to be January 22nd. I'm going to get that listed here. And you guys can join us. We are going to talk specifically rotary blade and things that you can cut with that and how those things work. So that will be 5 p.m. on the 22nd. It will be basically at close. I invite all of you to join me here in store. We've got our classroom set back up after Novi. Everything's all back in place and the power cords are all there and all that good jazz. So I'd love to see you, but you are very welcome to join me virtually if you are out of state. I'm happy to have you guys join in and here. I will have kits prepped. If you don't want a kit, you can use your product at home. I don't care. So there'll be a class fee and a kit fee. You can choose if you just want to do the class or if you would like a kit. If you would like a kit and you are out of state, please sign up as soon as possible so we can get that in the mail for you and not have to worry about it being not there on time. So thank you so much for joining me. I am hoping to do a little bit more educational things this year. That's kind of my goal, to get different pieces of machines. So we talked ScanNCut today and the basics of how to do all of that. I will probably talk ScanNCut again and with different features and things like that. But my plan is to kind of go through the machines and say, you know, this is how you thread these. This is how you clean these. This is how you do this. And this is how you choose the stitch. And some a little bit more basic things on there so that especially when people are just getting started, there's a little bit more reference points for them. So I will still be doing stitch outs of, you know, blocks that come in and like, this is a weird block, let's stitch it out together. I'll still be doing things like that, but I am going to focus a little bit more on educational. So it's going to give you a little bit more information about your machines and how to use them to their best advantage. I can absolutely do a class on Canvas. I have done that before. I don't know if there's a video on it. I can check and see, but there is a handout on Canvas. It's in the links up at the top of the comments. So you can grab that in the meantime, or of course, always call and ask questions. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate all of you. And Happy New Year. If I don't think I said that. I said this is 2026, but I don't think I wished you guys a Happy New Year. So Happy New Year to all of you. And please feel free to call anytime. You guys have a great one. We'll see you next week, which live on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. We'll see you there. Bye.